This is Menkari Australia. Breaking news.
This is Menkari News Australia, live in Sydney. Federal Opposition Leader Sussan Ley is speaking now on the Bondi massacre at Bondi Beach, where at least 15 people were killed and dozens injured in a terrorist attack targeting a Jewish Hanukkah event. She is focusing on the pain and anger within the Jewish community and calling for stronger action against anti-Semitism and extremism in Australia. Let's take you back now to Sussan Ley, live.
Cried with them in their homes, in their synagogues, on the street. And you have to be there to hear and indeed feel the grief, the pain, and yes, the anger. And last night at the vigil, the Jewish community made it abundantly clear. They want a Commonwealth Royal Commission into this attack and into the hideous anti-Semitism that has been allowed to fester in this country. The Prime Minister's refusal to call a Commonwealth Royal Commission and to offer an unqualified apology, as Premier Minns has done, is adding insult to the injury that the Jewish community is feeling and our nation is feeling. Now, the Prime Minister must look past the jeers directed at him last night and hear the cries. He must put aside his pride and take action. He has failed to respond appropriately to this terrible attack. But there is still an opportunity to get it right. There is a pathway forward and a model of leadership and unity, as has been displayed right here in New South Wales. Australians are looking to you, Prime Minister, and so far you are letting them down. Your response is standing in the way of the response our nation needs. It requires humility and moral courage to accept responsibility and honestly deal with the failings over the last few years that have led to this rise in anti-Semitism, particularly since October the 7th, 2023. The Jewish community feels that a series of decisions the Albanese government took or did not take have contributed to where we are today. There can be no more distractions, no more excuses, no more diversions. We must confront the real cause of the horror that occurred at Bondi, anti-Semitism, and especially, in this case, extreme Islamic anti-Semitism. Our reputation as a safe, secure, cohesive country is being stripped away. Australians deserve better. Now, the Prime Minister can't change what happened over a week ago or the failures of his response so far, but he can change what he does today. So today, the Coalition releases the draft terms of reference for a Commonwealth Royal Commission into the Bondi attack and into anti-Semitism in Australia. This is about truth, accountability, and keeping Australians safe. In response to the horror at Bondi, the Prime Minister has announced proposals, but they're too little, they're too late, and they will take too long. Now, as a constructive opposition, we have listened carefully. And I invite the Prime Minister to sit down with me immediately to refine and finalise these terms of reference so we can establish a Royal Commission, a Commonwealth Royal Commission, before Christmas. Now, this is a good faith offer to work together on a bipartisan basis to establish this very much needed Commonwealth Royal Commission. But let me be very clear. Whenever the Prime Minister decides to bring the Parliament back, and it should have been today, I will be moving in the House of Representatives to establish this Commonwealth Royal Commission. Now, it's up to Labor to decide whether they support it or they don't. I hope they listen to the Jewish community, who so often, over the last 2 years in particular, have felt that their Prime Minister did not listen. And, Prime Minister, if you won't listen to the Coalition, if you won't listen to the Jewish community, maybe you will listen to your own members, to Mike Freelander, one of your Sydney-based members of Parliament, who today has also joined the long list of people calling for a Commonwealth Royal Commission. This Royal Commission will shine a light into every dark corner where anti-Semitism has been allowed to fester and grow. On our university campuses, in our wonderful arts sector, in schools, across civil society, across all levels of government. The Prime Minister has the power that he has always had to act on anti-Semitism. We call on him now to summon the purpose the nation is demanding. Now, he said only a few days ago he will do whatever it takes. Well, this is what it takes. The New South Wales Parliament, just down the road, is sitting today. The federal Parliament should be sitting too. Prime Minister, the time for words really is finished. The Parliament should be sitting today so we can legislate the immediate responses to the support and setting up of our Commonwealth Royal Commission. We have work to do. In order to honour the dead, we must confront uncomfortable truths, hard truths. That's what this Commonwealth Royal Commission is about. And I want to add that it doesn't prevent any of the actions that we called for just 2 days ago to get underway right now. We really do have work to do. I'll hand over to the Shadow Attorney General.
Thanks, Susan, and thanks for your leadership in relation to this. Last week you just stood up the task force, and one of the first tasks that you gave us was to look at the terms of reference for this Royal Commission, so thank you. Some of you may be wondering, in fact the Prime Minister himself may be wondering, why a Commonwealth Royal Commission is required as opposed to the State Royal Commission that the Premier Minns is considering. The issues that we have experienced in this country since the 7th of October 2023 are multidimensional and multijurisdictional. It is totally inappropriate and insufficient to simply have a State Royal Commission which would effectively have its hands tied in dealing with state matters. We know that there are likely to be have identified many failings as a result of what happened at Bondi, not the least of which certainly cross jurisdictions of our states and territories and our Commonwealth. It is imperative that a Commonwealth Royal Commission be held in relation to not just what happened at Bondi, not just the terrorist attacks at Bondi, but also the anti-Semitism that has been effectively left unchecked since the 7th of October 2023. Only a Commonwealth Royal Commission can effectively deal with all of these issues. The Commonwealth Royal Commission will, if, as Susan has said, if the Prime Minister is willing to sit down with Susan and nut out what we have put on the table is a draft terms of reference. Now, that may be subject to change. We're happy to look at even additional further things that the Prime Minister might want in there. But it's very important that we at least look at the detailed terms of reference which we have now provided. We think it should be sat on by a composition of at least 3 commissioners. one who is from the Jewish community and who has significant experience in matters dealing with anti-Semitism. The second member should have significant law enforcement, intelligence agency experience. And the third member who should lead the Commission should be a current or former Superior Court judge with experience in any one of those particular issues. What's very important is that we need to get direction from the Royal Commission, and we think that an interim report or interim recommendations should be handed down at the very least no later than the 23rd of June 2026. That would give the Commission 6 months to provide its initial recommendations. Now, as to the terms of reference, they can effectively be broken up into these areas. Certainly, it would be looking into the rise of anti-Semitism in this country. It would look at things such as online, the media, arts, cultural and education sectors that led to the Bondi attack. It would look at the conduct of ministers, departments across all levels of government with respect to responding to the rise of anti-Semitism and the Bondi terrorist attack. It would examine the roles of radical Islam, far left and far right neo-Nazi extremism, as would it look at anti-Israel and anti-Zionist attitudes into elevating anti-Semitic environment in Australia. The Commission would examine whether the Commonwealth and state law enforcement and intelligence agencies cooperated sufficiently together. That is just one of the reasons why it's so incredibly important that a Commonwealth Royal Commission be held. If this were just to be a state Royal Commission, then that state Royal Commission would not have the powers to be able to call people from our intelligence agencies and our Commonwealth government departments and indeed ministers of the Crown at a federal level. One of the major issues that it must look into is radical Islamic extremism and how the Commonwealth, state and territory governments and agencies have addressed or failed to address that issue. It must look into immigration and how people are given visas, how they are given citizenship, and importantly, how people are entitled to review the decisions made by the Commonwealth Government. It should also look into the appropriateness of how visas and citizenship are given in relation to fit and proper person test, as to their conduct and how they have communicated any anti-Semitic views, for example. I'll leave the education, arts and cultural sector in more detail to my friend Julian and Lisa, but this is an issue that is very important that will be looked or should be looked into as part of the Royal Commission terms. It will also look into the legal framework of state and territory and Commonwealth governments and the various law enforcement, the laws that we have in place across the country. It should look at the adequacy of offences and powers relating to advocating of terrorism, incitement, recruitment, terror financing, extremist material and, importantly, preparatory acts. We'll look at whether existing hate speech, vilification and incitement laws are adequate to prevent and respond to anti-Semitism, including laws concerning hate symbols and those of listed terrorist groups. It is utterly unacceptable after what has happened not just at Bondi. The Australian Jewish community has been telling this government that they feel unsafe. They have been telling this government that it has to act to protect them. And it is utterly unacceptable that this government continues to delay in its response in a meaningful way. And under Sussan, your leadership, the putting together of these terms of reference will go some way to ensuring that the right questions are asked and we will get to the bottom and the right answers are provided. Julian.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for your work in drafting the terms of reference for this proposed Royal Commission. Last night with Sussan Ley and with 20,000 other people, I was at the communal commemoration at Bondi. There were 3 leaders who showed up at Bondi. The first is Sussan Ley, who has been with the Jewish community of this city every day since last Sunday's appalling massacre of Jewish lives in Bondi. She's attended the funerals. She's met the families who are sitting waiting in ICU. She's met the heroes. She's walked around Bondi talking to ordinary Jewish Australians who are fed up to the back teeth at the inaction of this government for the last 2 years. She understands the anger and she has taken action and called for action from day one. Sussan, your leadership has been unwavering, and the Jewish community of this country, the Australian community, understands it. The second leader was the Liberal leader of New South Wales, Kelly Slane, who last Sunday night left one communal commemoration to go to another communal commemoration, the Bondi commemoration of Hanukkah, where the shooting was still going on, and she herself put herself in harm's way and helped the many victims of the shooting that night. Her actions have been heroic. The third leader who was there last night is Chris Minns, the Premier of New South Wales, who's taken responsibility for the failures in policing and who has recalled his parliament today to do something about it. In contrast, there was a person there, the so-called Prime Minister of this country, Anthony Albanese, who never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity. The Jewish community of this country cannot survive on the crumbs of this government and this appalling Prime Minister who is always late to the party and who wants the Jewish community of this country to live in his half measures. For 2 years we've been fighting his half measures. For 2 years we've put forward proposals in the Parliament to improve the security of Australians, and he's voted consistently against them. He's dragged his feet. He's claimed credit for things that were not his idea, or that he did, having been dragged kicking and screaming, and the community is sick and tired of it. I don't want to see the memories of the 15 Australians who died last Sunday. I don't want to see their memories being desecrated by this half-measure departmental review that is proposed by this Prime Minister. We need nothing short of a Royal Commission now. And if you're not going to listen to us, listen to Mike Freelander, your very own Jewish backbencher from Western Sydney, who has the moral fortitude that you do not, to actually call for a Royal Commission, because we've got to get to the bottom of this. We can't have a situation for one more day in this country where the Jewish community, where any Australian is forced to live in the half measures and the delayed action and the talking out of both sides of their mouth that this Prime Minister has given us repeatedly for 2 years. Late to act on the doxing, late to act on the banning of Nazi symbols and salutes, done nothing about the anti-Semitism that is rampant on our campuses, still, even now, does nothing about the Jew hatred that is everywhere in the arts and cultural sector. And rather than looking at the root causes of what caused those gunmen to pick up those weapons in the first place, that only a Royal Commission will get to, he calls for another departmental review. This is the most shameful act in the history of our nation. Australia stands humiliated by the failure of leadership of this man, by the failure of leadership which has led to the extraordinary deaths in a terrorist act on the shores of Bondi, in this great city of ours. The Jewish communal leaders made their position very clear last night. Both state and federal called for a federal Royal Commission, nothing more, nothing less. Marnie Pearlstein, who is an extraordinary Jewish communal leader, has started a petition on change.org And I encourage every fair-minded Australian who is watching this program today to sign that petition, to call on the Australian government, the Albanese government, to bring about this Federal Royal Commission. This departmental review is just another attempt at deflecting and minimising the Jew hate that has been allowed to go on in this country. This departmental review can't call witnesses, it can't compel evidence in a public forum, it can't allow the stories of the 2 years of anti-Semitic hate to be told and retold. It cannot root out anti-Semitism wherever it's to be found. It's only a Royal Commission that can do this. We demand the Prime Minister bring the Parliament back today to do what Chris Minns is doing, to listen to Sussan Ley, to extend the hand of bipartisanship and for once in his life to take the real action that is needed to defeat the anti-Semitism that we are seeing and we have seen in this country for far too long.
Well said, Julian.
Well, you've heard it. You've heard it straight. No one can ignore what this great Jewish man and this great Jewish leader and representative of his community has just made very, very clear. The Prime Minister has failed Jewish Australians. He's failed our whole country at the basic task of keeping his citizens safe. He ignored calls when Jews were being spat on in our streets, when Jewish academics' offices were being urinated on, when Jewish students were being attacked, when Jewish businesses were being boycotted, when Jewish places of worship were being bombed. What did this guy need to say this was all too apparent? The terrifying thing is we are shocked, but no one who's been paying attention for the last 2 years is at all surprised that our beautiful country and this beautiful city has been hijacked as part of a global Islamic extremist terrorist campaign. A PR campaign that too many Australians signed up to in the name of compassion. To hate Israel is to hate Jews. It is that simple. Chants may seem meaningless on a beautiful summer's day across the Sydney Harbour Bridge, but Prime Minister, they're anti-Semitic. They fuel the hate. The Islamic extremism that is rife in our suburbs of our capital cities. And you cannot fix a problem, Prime Minister, if you are not prepared to name it. We will know this Prime Minister is serious about tackling anti-Semitism when he names it for what it is. It's not the gun, it's Islamic extremism and it's in our suburbs. And for too long, we've papered over that reality in some hope of, this multicultural nirvana. But it has failed. We are subject to terrorist attacks from Islamic State-inspired Australians. We can't ignore that. It's been his tacit support, his equivalence of Islamophobia with anti-Semitism. And as the rabbi at the event I attended in Canberra last night to end Hanukkah said, anti-Semitism needs its own space. It shouldn't be joined in with other experiences of racism and hate, as has been this Prime Minister's want. And so, Penny Wong, the answers you've been giving on why you didn't go to Kibbutz Be'eri, why you didn't turn up to the Nova music site when you went to Israel, all of this, a recognition of Palestine, all of these decisions of your government have brought this upon us. So we need a Royal Commission to actually uncover that and give our Jewish community and all Australians a chance to get the answers, because there are way too many questions for us all on why this occurred.
Said Bridget. Questions? Paul.
Anthony Albanese said federal authorities will cooperate with the New South Wales Royal Commission. Are you doubting that is correct, or can you explain your view about why that is insufficient?
Well, two things. And the first and overriding one is, why would you not have a Commonwealth Royal Commission? Why would you make some weak half answer to a genuine question from the Jewish community, not just in Sydney but across this country, and not just the community that are Jewish either? All Australians. All Australians. Why would you not? Now, clearly, the anti-Semitism that has been left to fester, grow, metastasise across this country, it's not just happening in New South Wales, and Premier Minns and Kelly Sloan have shown great leadership, but it's not their job to lead other states. It's this Prime Minister's job to lead the country. And he has failed, because this is a Prime Minister who always reaches for a political solution to everything. But now he has been confronted with something where there is no political solution. There is just a demand for moral courage and moral clarity. And if you respond to that call from Australians, Prime Minister, you would not be hesitating this morning. You would simply be saying, bring on the Commonwealth Royal Commission.
Do you think that a Commonwealth Royal Commission should examine both the action of governments and its agencies dating back several years?
Everything. And Andrew Wallace will add to this in a moment, because our draft terms of reference are very detailed. This Royal Commission has to look at anti-Semitism, has to look at what has happened to this country, particularly since October the 7th, 2023, where the incidences of hatred of the Jewish people has increased and increased and increased. And it has to look at every section of the public sector, of the arts sector, of the university sector. Now, these are areas that receive public funding, and this Prime Minister has stood back and stood aside while our arts sector has been doxed, has been excoriated, has been excluded, has been ignored, and has never said a word. Same with the university academics, same with the actions on campus. And in more of the weak response that we heard from this government, you know, it's interesting. Areas such as the arts and universities, they didn't make it into the Prime Minister's proposals, because this is a Prime Minister who only ever thinks about the politics. I watched those artists last night. The singing, it was beautiful. They sang Australian songs. Well, sing Matilda. Songs that warm all our hearts. We still call Australia home. They sang Jewish songs. Those artists are part of this affront to our sector that delivers the arts, creativity, music, expression. They have been excluded by actions that this Prime Minister has stood back from. This makes me so very, very angry, because the Jewish people are incredibly warm and generous and open-hearted, and I've learnt nothing else. I've learnt that over the last couple of years. But this is just too much. And why? I mean, we are all angry and bewildered along with the Australian population. Why would you not call a Commonwealth Royal Commission, Prime Minister? Why would you not?
Thanks, Susan. I think that's the kernel of this issue. Why isn't the Prime Minister prepared to call a Commonwealth Royal Commission? The suggestions that you're referring to, where the Prime Minister says, oh, well, the Commonwealth agencies will assist the state. I'm sorry, I don't believe the Prime Minister. I don't trust the Prime Minister when he says that. A Commonwealth Royal Commission is the only vehicle with the agreement of all of the states and territories that can get to the bottom of all of these issues, that can call and compel witnesses and documentation from all agencies, all government departments, whether state, territory or federal, and even ministers, as to what they knew, when they knew it, what they did or what they didn't do. Only a Commonwealth Royal Commission can act in that way. And I think 27 million Australians are now sitting at home or at work and wondering, well, why doesn't the Prime Minister call a Commonwealth Royal Commission? What does he have to hide?
Bridget, the New South Wales Coalition Leader Singh has said that
That's emotional, Paul. What do you know that I don't know?
The limit of 4 firearms is arbitrary, and the New South Wales Nationals are going to vote against that legislation going through the New South Wales Parliament. Do you support limits on the number of firearms people can hold?
Let me make a point here, please, Paul. These measures are going through the New South Wales Parliament now. We will consider whatever comes out of the New South Wales Parliament, as we should. It's in progress. It is not federal law, it is state law. But we will not take a backward step in allowing a different conversation to take the place of the conversation that matters the most right here, right now, in this country, and that is the consequences of this Bondi lethal shooting on our country and what we need to do to address the anti-Semitic hate that is behind it. That is the main question. That is what the country should be focused on in the Commonwealth Royal Commission conversation.
I think the Australian people have seen through the deflection that the Prime Minister attempted last Monday. Now, obviously, New South Wales Parliament's voting on Minns's proposal to change firearm regulations in the state of New South Wales. That's a state issue, and the New South Wales Nationals will be voting against the legislation, as I understand it.
In terms of reference to this inquiry are very broad. It includes educational, arts, cultural, social media, and even traditional media companies. Is it your view that they have contributed to anti-Semitism, or what is the evidence of that you want to look to that indicates why you think that's necessary?
The conversations I've had with Jewish students that have had to sit in lecture theatres with "To the River, From the River to the Sea" and "Globalise the Intifada" type slogans writ large in those lecture theatres with the full approval of the universities and the lecturers. And the insults and hate that has been vented on Jewish students who simply walk across a university quadrangle showing the symbol of their faith. It is absolutely reprehensible. The example of the arts, which Julian can add to because he's done a lot of work on this already, having seen the disgraceful way this government is treating our artists who are brilliant, exceptional, and have contributed much to the quality of life in this country, who have been excluded just because they are of Jewish faith. And unfortunately, we have examples where too many people have simply looked the other way. When I talk to a family who says their child sat on a bus in their Jewish school uniform and were abused by people on the bus, but everybody else sitting on that bus said nothing. They all looked the other way. That's why we know that the scourge of anti-Semitism has indeed festered in every sector of our society. Open the blinds, shine the light on Prime Minister, put it all on the table, and let's have a Commonwealth Royal Commission.
You said that you would like to receive preliminary recommendations or findings out of the Royal Commission in 6 months. Do you see any value into inquiry into departments, including security agencies, as a way of speeding it up alongside a Commonwealth Royal Commission?
That's part of our proposal, our plan that we released a couple of days ago. It's to modernise counter-terrorism and anti-extremism and give our agencies the capability and the tools that they need to do their job. I'll give you one example. There is a bill on electronic surveillance. In front of the government, they haven't passed it. That's why it's still a bill. Now, the electronic surveillance regime in this country, and I'll ask my colleagues perhaps to add to this, is perhaps 20 years old. Before we had WhatsApp, before we had Signal, before we had the cloud, before we had encrypted communications. Are we really serious, Prime Minister? You've left this bill, just ignored it? You haven't given our agencies the tools they need to monitor the people who are out there on the streets operating undercover in darkness and carrying out atrocities. That's one of the things that has to happen now. Remember this, our Commonwealth Royal Commission needs to get underway straight away, but all of these other things we've proposed, they could have been started already.
Is your campaign here to put Anthony Albanese in the dock for the federal government response on anti-Semitism. Should he appear at a New South Wales Royal Commission or a federal Royal Commission?
The Prime Minister is the leader of the nation, and he should and must take ultimate responsibility for where we are and for where we need to go. And we have not seen him take responsibility. We have not seen him apologise. We've seen Premier Chris Minns apologise. We have not seen him accept that he needs to take a long, hard look at what is happening in Australia that has allowed this Jewish hatred to fester, that has had the consequences that we have seen on our streets over the last 2 years. But most importantly, what can be done now? Because the Prime Minister may have a different interpretation of what happened over the last 2 years than we do and Jewish Australians do, but he can act today. He can change going forward. He can initiate the Commonwealth Royal Commission that he needs to. And Australians have not seen leadership from this Prime Minister.
Penny Wong has again said this morning she'd like to see Australians take the temperature down. Do you agree with that statement?
I haven't seen Penny Wong on the streets of Bondi. I haven't seen Penny Wong at the vigil for 15 innocent murdered Australians. I didn't see Penny Wong at Bondi last night at the 8th night of Hanukkah. I didn't see Penny Wong attend a single funeral. I haven't seen Penny Wong shed a single tear. So maybe if more government members and ministers were like Mike Freelander and actually came to the streets of Bondi and listened, and not just listened, but heard the pain, heard the anguish, heard the call to action, we wouldn't have the ridiculous remarks that she made this morning.
Last question.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Flashwire, powered by redmondcari.com, where facts still matter and stories still mean something. If you believe in independent journalism with impact, hit subscribe and share this episode. Your support keeps truth alive.
Breaking. Verified. Australian. When the story breaks, we don't wait. We verify, explain, and bring you the facts straight from the source.
Now, Optus has clearly failed here. Optus have failed to put safety first.
Company Optus and its parent company Singtel offer commercial
discussions based as friends and trusting. And part of our discussions, informally as well as formally, has been
together. To be honest, so many countries that you wouldn't have even thought of it, they came together. The world has come together.
Now, we do need to draw a line in the sand when it comes to the protests that we continue to see in this country.
The Flashwire is your rapid response breaking news podcast, a stripped down, adrenaline-paced bulletin that drops minutes after major stories break. It's designed for listeners who want accuracy and speed, not noise. Think of it as the audio equivalent of a newsroom's red alert light turning on. Each episode runs under 5 minutes. Short enough to drop between scrolls, but packed with verified updates, eyewitness info, expert sound bites, and a forward look at what happens next. No spin, no filler, just what you need to know and what comes next.